All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Nun Gimel, Mizachas Psachim. So I think we left off we got to the Tanur Rabbanan. We got to the Tanur Rabbanan on the top of Nun Gimel, Amud Aleph, maybe 7 lines from the top. So Tanur Rabbanan, Eichlin be'anovim ad sheyichlu dilyos shel oichel. So you can eat grapes. We talked about yesterday the Zman beer. So we said as long as basically during a Shemitah year, as long as there's crops out in the field, you can go ahead and store them in your house. Once they're no longer available in the fields for the animals to eat in the fields, therefore you can no longer keep your house to feed your animals. So the grapes are good normally until the grapes of Ashicha Delios Shel Oichel. Oichel was the name of the place. So usually that was the place that had the last, olives remaining. Excuse me, not olives. We'll get to olives. The grapes remaining, and once those are no longer in the field, then you can be rest assured that they're no longer available. And however, that there's other ones in a certain year in a different location that are available, you can go ahead and still go ahead and keep them in your house. And you can also go ahead and keep olives until they finish out in Tkoa. And Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Ad sheyichla achron shel gush chalav. Gush chalav is another place, I guess, which would have the late olives. Kadei she'ani yotzei, in order that Ani will be able to go out and get olives there. However, if you can't go ahead and find it either on the branches or by the roots of the main part of the tree, at least a rova, which is a shear, a large shear, that amount of olives there, then eichlin and begoros ad, then that's done. And eichlin begoros ad sheyichlu pagi beis hani. And you can go ahead and eat the grogeros, right, which are dried figs. You eat those until they're no longer available in beis hani. And Amar Rabbi Yehuda lo hizkaranu pagi beis hani elin meiser. However, no, that those figs and pagi beis hani is nothing to do with beer. If only those are available, it's already Zman beer. Why? Because lo hizkar pagi beis hani elin meiser. Only when it comes to that they're chayav meiser. That we learn. It says over there, because you learn it in parentheses. It says. Right, I guess the Tran, I'm not sure if it's from Mishnah, but he says it's a statement that Pagi Beis Hini v'Hini Tuvina Chayvim b'Meiser, that the dates of Beis Hini and Tuvayana, those are Chayvim Meiser, but not when it comes. It's nothing, not halacha. It's only teaching halacha when it comes to Meiser, but not teaching halacha that if they're still available there, then is the Zman beer. And Eichlin b'Tmarim, you can eat dates. Ad sheyichla achron shebetzar, until they're the last ones, they're still considered to be in the field until the last ones remain in tzar. Rishon Gamliel Omer eichlin al shel beis hakifin ve'ein eichlin al shel beis hashitzin. And we saw similarly yesterday, they can eat them when they're still in the trees, but if they're already only found in the thorns, that's not really considered to be on the fields, and therefore it already tells you that it is now the zman of the beer. We says over there, we have another one. So till now we've been describing Zman. In other words, go to this location and see if those fruits are found in that location on the trees there. If they're no longer available in the trees, you know that they're basically not to be found anywhere. But we have another brisa, which doesn't set as standard in terms of the location and where to find it, rather in terms of Zmanim. You can go ahead and eat grapes out of Pesach, v'zeisim out of Tzeres, begrogos out of Chanukah, b'tmarim out of Purim. Right? You can go ahead and eat grapes until Pesach, and olives remain until Shavuos, and the dried figs until Chanukah, and even dates all the way until Purim. The Amar Rav Bibi and says Rabbi Yechon Tarti Basrai Machli. For he switches around, I guess, the dates and the dried figs between the Chanukah and Purim. He says, I guess the dates are Chanukah and the dried figs are Purim. But nevertheless, we see that it's a different shear for this man beer. So our answers, the first teretz is Idi Chad Shir. Really, it's the same shear. In other words, when is this man, the last ones found in Tkoa or the other examples we gave, those are during these times, right? On Pesach, Shavuos, Chanukah, Purim. Or Viboy Sema, or you can say that really if there's later ones, they can go by the later ones up until this Zman. So this Zman basically says those are the normal times. And if there's later ones, those later ones can apply, olives all the way up or grapes all the way up until Pesach, olives all the way up until Shavuos, and so on and so forth. And that is like the last call. Even if there might be some grapes even beyond Pesach, we say that's already considered to be the Zman beer. So Tanya, we learn in the Brisa, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Omer, Siman laharim milin. A sign of something to be in the mountain ranges, right? That is milin. Those are walnut trees. Siman la'amakim, something which is a valley, is the kalim. If you go ahead and find palm trees there. Siman la'nachlim, if you have a siman for a nachal, a brook, a stream, that is kanim, that is reeds, and siman l'shvela shikma. And that of a plain is a sycamore tree. And even though there's no proof for these, but nevertheless, there's a pasuk that hence to it. The pasuk says, and he gave over the silver in Yerushalayim. They were like stones as much as stones. And there were the amount of sycamore trees on plains. So you see that plains, a standard plain, has sycamore trees. Now the Gemara will explain why. So similar milin, similar makim dekalim, nafkamila bikurim. That's for bikurim, because when you go ahead and you bring different parts of the shiva minim, right? So those are chayiv and bikurim. So only if they come from these good places. So so when it comes from basically, the dates come from valleys. Right, and therefore that teaches you that from over there, that's where you should take the bikurim from. The Tanan ein mivim bikurim elam shiva saminim. You only bring bikurim from the shiva saminim. V'loy mitikalim shibaharim. V'loy miperish shabakim. Right, you don't go ahead and take from palm trees that are in the mountains, but rather you go ahead. You don't go ahead and take the palm trees from mountains. V'loy miperish shabakim or fruits in the valleys. Rather, right, we say the fruits come from the mountains. And the dates, those come from the valleys. Fine. And then so that was those two. And then we say similar nachlim kanim, and for like a river, right? For a nachal, that's reeds. That's a sign that this is considered to be a stream. And afkamina nachal eitan. All right, we said over there, by a case of Egla Rufo, you have to go ahead, if they find the decapitated body, and they perform the ceremony by a Nachal Ezan, by a raging river. So a sign of a raging river is if it has these reeds. If it has the reeds, then it's a fit place to do the Egla Arufa. And Siman Shvela Shikma, and the sign of a Shvela is for a plain is a sycamore tree. So right, when it comes to sales, right, you go ahead and make a deal, right, to go ahead and purchase a plain, and then there's no sycamore trees, so therefore that does not qualify as a plain. And now that we say this last one, that's for actually compared to all of them, right? For the one who agrees to buy trees, if there's no mountainous area, right? If there's no fruit trees there, that's not really considered to be a mountain, and so on and so forth, and therefore that would be the nafkamina. Fine. Naya Mishnah. So Mishnah on the bottom of Nun Gimel, the Mishnah says, "Malkum shnagol limkor behema daka lenachrim meichrim. Malkum shlanohagol limkor ein meichrim." So it used to be the halacha, right? And now it's a little different. But the one was not. There was. We'll soon see that one was not allowed to go ahead and basically sell a large animal or rent out or sell a large animal to a guy. Why? Because they'll go ahead and use it, and people will recognize the animal, and they'll see it working on Shabbos, and then they'll think the person, right, is allowed to go ahead and lend out or rent out his animal to a guy to go ahead and work on Shabbos, and therefore to prevent that, for people to perhaps to come to do a doraisa of having a guy plow with one's animal on Shabbos. Therefore, they prohibited the sale of larger animals. So the question was also, what about smaller animals, right? So some places have different minhagim. So in a place there were noheg to sell it, a small animal, the nachrim, then if you're in that place, you can go ahead and sell it. And a makom shelo nogu. However, if they did not go ahead and sell it in those places, ein meichrim, you can't go ahead and sell it. Uv'chol makom ein meichrim lehen behema gasa. And in any place, you can't go ahead and sell a behema gasa, because as we mentioned, right, those can be used to work. And therefore, since they're used to work, therefore, it would be forbidden, because people will think that they recognize that as his animal, and he's working, and his animal's working on Shabbos, which is a d'oraisa, and they won't know that he sold it to him. And now, so we say, and that which we say, agalam, osaychin, shleimim v'shivur, and that applies to all types of animals, whether it's the young ones, or right, the egos like a calf, or a sayichin, right, are other young, small animals. There are weak animals that also cannot, pull a plow, or whether they're shlemim, they're full. Those are healthy animals, and which is obvious, right? Or shvurim, or broken animals, animals which are no longer go ahead, but nevertheless, it's still prohibited to sell those animals, even though it will no longer work. No one will see it working. Nevertheless, it's still forbidden to go ahead and sell. However, Rabbi Yehuda Mati B'Shura, Rabbi Yehuda, he says it's mutter to go ahead and sell a broken animal, because once again, it won't be used for plowing, and therefore people will not, misunderstand and say, "Oh, you're allowed to go ahead and have your animal plow, or give it to a guy to plow on Shabbos because I see that guy's animal plowing." And B'Beseira matir b'sus. And B'Beseira also, he permitted a horse, even though a horse is a larger animal, since a horse doesn't pull a plow, so therefore he permitted sales of horses. And Malkum Shenagu Lechol Tzli B'Lelei Psachim Eichlin, and a place where the minhag is, right, to go ahead and eat roasted meat on the night of Pesach, right, which we do not have that minhag, right? But in a place where they did, then Eichlin and Malkum Shenagu Shelo Lechol Ein Eichlin. But a place that we don't have the minhag of eating roasted meat on Pesach night, i.e., obviously not, not during the Zman HaMikdash when there's a Korban Pesach. If the minhag is not to go ahead and eat the roasted meat, then you do not. Zok the Gemara. All right, 6 lines from the bottom. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Aser Loila Adam Sheyomer Baser Zel Pesachu Mipnei Shenir B'Makdish Behemtoi V'Eichel Kachim B'Chutz. It's aser for a person to say, right, this meat is for Pesach, is Bizmanazet, because it looks like he's being makdish his animal as for his Korban Pesach, for Hekdesh. And it will appear that he's eating kachim. Not it will appear that he would be, if it would work, it would be like eating kachim outside of Yerushalayim. And right, and Rashi says even if it was already shechted, even if the meat was already shechted, right? Some people say, when the Pesach, they don't point to, excuse me, at the Seder, they don't point to the animal, to the meat, right? So when they say mora, Pesach matzah mora, right? So some people don't do that because of this is the Gemara. Now, Amar Papa Dafka Basar Vachitilo the Minta the Pischa Kamar, right? But it's Dafka when it comes to the meat. However, when it comes to the wheat, then then that would be mutter, because he's just saying this for Pesach. It means that this will be. I'm going to watch this for Pesach. I'm going to make sure this doesn't become chametz for Pesach, and it's not a shaila of making it kosher. So the Gemara asks, "I ubasar lo," and basar you can't. So Meis fans Akasha Rabbi Yaisi says Rabbi Yaisi. Now remember, this is Rabbi Yaisi saying soon we're going to be machlekes as to whether it's going to be Rabbi Yaisi or Rabbi Shimon. So right now we have it as Rabbi Yaisi, and so he says Meisvei Amar Rabbi Yaisi Todos Ishrami. All right, so Todos was a very powerful person. Hinig as Bnei Rami, and he basically go ahead and he had those people of around him in Rome. Lechol Gedim Mukolasim B'Leili Psachim. They would go ahead and they would roast their animals mukolasim, right? Mukolasim means, I guess, with part of the innards of the body, basically roasted around it. It would be basically around the animal, right, as he roasted at the innards. And he would do that for the Pesach. So shochalo imle todesata gazrunu alacha nidui. Shata matches Yisrael kachim b'chutz. Right, that appears that you're preparing your gedi, right? Shalom bezman mikdash. Outside in Rome, right, not in Yerushalayim, and you're preparing this way, and it appears that it's doing like the Korban Pesach, and it would be like kachim b'chutz, but you're todos, and we don't want to start with you. So kachim sagad Isaac, but you think we kachim? So ela ema, rather don't say daf kachim ela ema karav lachilas Yisrael kachim b'chutz, right? It's similar, right? It's similar. It's daim the kachim. Rashi says, right, similar to having kachim outside. So the Gemara says mekulasin shem mekulas lo. A dafka over here, if the way they prepared it was to have all the innards and the way it roasted with all that around it, dafka was mekulas, right? Mekulas means like armored. It was it was like the innards were, I guess, roasted around it, which is this armored appearance is around it. However, bedafka mekulas. But regularly, low, it's not an issue. So we see that basar shouldn't be a problem unless it's roasted in a specific way. So Amri mekulas loishna amar loishna lo amar. When it comes to mekulas, if it was prepared in such a way, then it doesn't make a difference, right? It doesn't make a difference whether he says this is for Pesach or not. that would be usher. However, Shane Makulas, but our case, when we're talking about regular meat, when it's not, Makulas is not prepared in the way with the innards all around it, then Peirashin, only if he says, Zel Pesach, that would be usher, about low Peirish low. But if he doesn't say this is Pesach and he roasted it, then that wouldn't be an issue of Kachim Bechutz. And Ravacha Masni Lo Hamasnis. And Rabbi Shimon. So Ravacha learned this brisa that we just started before, this Meisve, as I mentioned before. We said Amar Rabbi Yosi, and he brought the case of Todos. So that was Rabbi Yosi who brought it. So he says it was Rabbi Shimon. Why? So Masni Lo Hamasnis Rabbi Shimon. So Masni Rabbi Sheish has Bishlo the Tani Lo Rabbi Yosi Nicha. It works well according to the opinion holds of Rabbi Yosi. It's fine because we don't have anything that would contradict Rabbi Yosi that he would say that this is an effective way of making a hektish. All right. But according to Rabbi Shimon, if you say Rabbi Shimon was the one who taught this brisa, so minicha, how could it be? Right? Does it work? V'atanat. Right? Rabbi Shimon Paiter, Shaloi he's nadiv, kederchams naftim. So there's a machlokes in the case of menachos, when it comes to a person's makdish grains and he wants to bring a mincha as an adava. So there's a whole shiloh over there. The Gemara, we're not going to get too involved in there, but over there, Rabbi Shimon says basically he's pater, right? Because he did not do it in the proper way. Now, in order to make a korban pesach, to make a kudshim, they would have to designate the animal as a korban pesach, right? And then prepare it in such a way. But if you already prepared the animal and you say Zela Pesach, right? That's not the normal way of being makdish an animal. You can only be makdish an animal while it's still alive. So therefore, according to Rabbi Shimon, that which Todos did shouldn't be effective. It shouldn't be an issue of daimel lekudshim. So Amar Le Ravina Ravashi. So Ma Demasin Lo Rabbi Yosi Minicha. What? Okay. So you want to say it's like Rabbi Yosi, but is saying it's like Rabbi Yosi, is that also not problematic? Amar Rabba Rabbi Shimon B'shitas Rabbi Yosi Amra. That Rabbi Shimon actually holds like Rabbi Yosi. Amar Af Bigmar Devarav Adam Nitfas. So it's another also machlekes in a case of making things hekdesh, talking about a case a person says this animal is an ola and a shlamim, right? So he says two things, but obviously a person can't say two things simultaneously, right? So the question is, did he first make an ola, then change his mind and make it a shlamim, or was he trying to make it both, which would be problematic because the kedusha of an ola is different than that of a shlamim. So that was a whole machlokas over there. And according to Rabbi Yosi, right? So Rabbi Yosi over there says even over there, so he says af begar dvarav adam nitfas, right? And therefore, it would be in such a case, according to Rabbi Yosi, back in our case, according to so if Rabbi Shimon holds like Rabbi Yosi over there, so my lab Rabbi Shimon serve like Rabbi Yosi nami serve like Rabbi Shimon, and just like Rabbi Yosi over there holds like Rabbi Shimon, so maybe we'd say in our case Rabbi Shimon would hold like Rabbi Yosi, and therefore once again, if you say Rabbi Shimon is problematic, then Rabbi Yosi is problematic because he holds the same, right? So the Gemara says. So it says no, that's not the case. Rabbi Shimon said like Rabbi Yosi, Veloy Rabbi Yosi said like Rabbi Shimon. So you can easily say that no, Rabbi Shimon does hold like Rabbi Yosi as we established, and therefore Rabbi Shimon in that case over there, when a person wants to designate an animal both as an ola and a shlamim, so he holds like Rabbi Yosi there. But in our case, who says Rabbi Yosi hold like Rabbi Shimon? Rabbi Shimon would say that it's not kudshim at all, and according to Rabbi Yosi, it would be a problem of perhaps making it similar to kudshim b'chutz, and therefore Rabbi Yosi said that case was bad, but however it was todos, and therefore they didn't want to go ahead and basically penalize him. So Yiboilu, speaking of todos,
hang on one second. You want this?
Yeah. Are we good? All right. Iboilu todos ishromi. This todos ishromi was he gava rabba havi or bal grofen havi? Was he? They said they didn't want to go ahead and put him in chayrim because he was todos, because he was gava rabba. So what does that mean? Or right? Does it mean that he was basically a big talmid chacham and therefore they didn't want to go ahead and put him in chayrim? Or was it because he was, he was a mafia guy? He was, someone who was powerful and therefore perhaps a threat if they would go ahead and try and penalize him. So Tashma, come listen. Todos ishromi. So we see that he also darshaned. So he was a Talmid Chacham. He darshaned. He says, "Maro Chananim Mishav Azariah Shemasu Atzman Al Kedushas Hashem Lekivshana Eish." Right. So what did Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, right, who went in the case of Nebuchadnezzar, basically they threw themselves instead of bowing down to him, they threw themselves inside a burning furnace, and miraculously they came out unscathed. So why did they go ahead and where do they see the precedence to go ahead and do that? So nasu kavachemer bi'atzim mitzvadim. So they made a kavachemer, right? They made their own kavachemer from the frogs in the case of from the makas in Mitzrayim. So when it comes to the frogs, they're not commanded, right, in any sort of Kedushas Hashem. Nevertheless, it says by them, it says over there, and they went into the houses, right, and it says went in the tanurim and in their ovens, and right, and into their bowls, right, they're kneading bowls. Now, so when do we say that the bowls are found by a tanur? Say right? And we say that is a time when basically the oven is on, right? And therefore, in other words, they need it right before they put in the oven. So in other words, they didn't just jump into the ovens when the ovens were off. They jumped into the ovens when the ovens were hot. And nevertheless, they jumped into there, and they weren't commanded on kiddush for kiddush Hashem. Certainly us who were commanded to go ahead and be mekadesh Shem Shemayim, certainly, right, if we're told to go ahead and bow down to someone, bow down to idols, certainly we shouldn't go ahead and serve any other gods, and therefore we are going to go ahead and jump into this this burning furnace. And Rabbi Yossi Baravin Amar Matim Laikis Shel Talmid Chacham. Right, and in addition, Todos used to also go ahead and basically put money into the wallets of Talmid Chacham, right? And Damar Rabbi Yochanan, Kol Hamatil Meloi Lekis Talmid Chachamim Zeicha v'Yoshev v'Yeshiva Shamal. Whoever goes ahead and puts Meloi Lekis, Meloi is like money or merchandise inside the wallets of Talmid Chachamim, he will be zeicha to go ahead and sit in the Yeshiva Shamala. Shnei says, "Keep it tzela chachma, but tzela kesef," right? Because in the tzel, the shadow, or the hut of chachma, of wisdom, is also that of silver. So if they go ahead and support the Talmid Chachamim, also there would be zeicha to that. So we see that he was in different cases that Todos was darshaning. So obviously he wasn't a mafia guy; he was a Talmid Chacham. Fine. Naya Mishnah. Mishnah says, "Makom shenagu." There we go. So Makom shenagu lahadlik es haner b'leili Yom Kippurim madlikim. In a place where the minhag was to go ahead and light a candle on Yom Kippurim, to leave it on over Yom Kippur, then there will be madlik. And Makom shenagu shelo lahadlik ein madlikin. But a place where they would not have the minhag to leave a candle lit, they would not be madlik. And we'll explain why. But however, they would go ahead and they would leave lights on overnight in the Bate Knisias, and Shuls, and base medrashes, and in dark areas in Amavui, which are dark, or also for sick people. So we'll explain why. What's the reason? Satana, Bain Shamr Lahalik, whether the minhag is to go ahead and leave the candle lit overnight on Yom Kippurim, right? Obviously, there is no Suda like we have on Shabbos, right? The reason that you have the candles on Shabbos is, for Shalom Bayis, to have your meals well lit, but there is no meal on Yom Kippur night, so do you have to leave it lighted or not? So it depends on the minhag. However, whether they said to leave it on or leave it off, right? Both of them were for one reason and one reason only. Let me just see. I think Rashi says over there. Right. So one reason is to if they will go ahead and leave it on, so then therefore there couldn't be. It's basically preventing one of these surim on Yom Kippur is tashmish amita, right? Having relations, and therefore since the light is on, since it's well lit, therefore they would prevent from tashmish. And the other side holds that if the light is on, then perhaps one would go ahead and see his wife and desire for tashmish amita, and therefore to prevent that, you leave it dark so he doesn't, really basically he doesn't really see her, and therefore he won't, want tashmish amita. But both of them are done for the purpose of preventing one of these surim of Yom Kippur. And Amar Rav Yeshua, Darash Rava Kulam Tzadikim Le'olam Yirshu Aretz. It says all your people, they are all tzadikim, right? and they will be, and they'll inherit the land. So bein shem lahalik, bein she'amar shelo shneim lo niskam elo davar echad. Both of them have both the shem shemaim. So whether you do it one way or the other, both minhagim are warranted and commendable. So Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel ein mevarchin ala or ella b'motzei Shabbos ho'il tchilas b'riyaso hu. Person is not mevarich upon fire, but only motzei Shabbos, right? You only make the bracha of fire on motzei Shabbos, not after other times. Ho'il tchilas b'riyaso hu, because that was when the fire began. That was when first, so Adam and Chava, when he thought basically, after, the world was going dark, he didn't know if the world would continue. So that was when, he chanced upon fire, right? Some say it was from lightning, right? So, but basically, so you say that's when the bracha is made, because the Saturday night, the first Motzei Shabbos, was when the first fire was. And Amalei was Saba Vitemu Rabbi Rechana. And so certain elders said, and some say it was Rabbi Rechana, Yashir. Right? He said, Yasha, this is correct, and this so was said by Rabbi Yochanan. So Ula Havi Rachiv Chamra V'Azo. So one time Ula was traveling, and he was on a donkey, and he was going. V'Havi Shakol V'Azo Rabbi Abu Miyamine V'Rabbi Rechana Mismole. Okay, so you have Ula in the middle. He was riding the donkey, and on his right was Rabbi Abba, and on his left was Rabbi Rechana. And Omerle, Rabbi Abba, Ula said, Rabbi Abba was on his right, said to Ula. So, Vada Damrisa Mishmeid Rabbi Yochanan. Right? Is it true that what you said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Ein Mevarchan Ur El B'Motzei Shabbos, that you only make a bracha on fire on Motzei Shabbos? Hot Chilas B'Riyasahu, right? Baramir Eish is only said on Motzei Shabbos, right? Since that was the beginning of the Bria. So, Hadar Ula. And after that, Ula Chaza, so Ula, who he was the one in the middle, was riding Chaza be Chana Bishus. So he saw that he looked at Rabbi Chana, so Amarlei, Ana Lav Amri. So he said, right? Didn't I tell you this? Eloha Amri. I said something else. I didn't say this in the Shem Rabbi Yochanan. I tell you something else. The Tani Tana commented Rabbi Yochanan. It was taught in front of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Shimon Elazar Omer Yom Kippur Shechali Yeis V'Shabbos Af Makom Shal Halik Malikin Mipnei Kavod Shabbos. That if you have Yom Kippurim that Chali on Shabbos, even in a place right where they say not to go ahead and light in the house, nevertheless we do go ahead and have the candle for Shabbos, even though there's still no Suda, right? And on that Rabbi Yochanan said, the Chaim said no, that you don't go ahead and you don't go ahead and light the candle. So he said, if that's the case, basically the halachi was saying was only talking about basically lighting the candle only on that you don't light it then. But the Chachamim say it's usher, and therefore he never mentioned this case, right? So in other words, that which you said, Rabbi Yochanan said. He thought he was talking about making a bracha on that you have the fire after Shabbos. He was talking about having the fire, not making a bracha after Shabbos. Rather, he was talking about having the fire on for Yom Kippur when Shabbos falls out on Yom Kippur. So or Yom Kippur falls out on Shabbos. So so he says, so he said to him, Adateh. Right, then that must be it. That's what he said, right? In other words, he only made this. Rabbi Yochanan did not talk about the case of making a bracha on fire after Shabbos. Rather, he only discussed the case of when Yom Kippur is Chalias b'Shabbos. That's that even in that case, you go ahead and you leave the and even in that place you light a candle, even though normally you don't be Malik and Yom Kippur. So we'll stop here, and then the Gemara will continue with the back and forth here. All right, shkayach everybody. Everyone have a good day. And hopefully, Mr. Hashem will continue this tomorrow.